right. Hello. Sorry about Monday. I wasn't feeling well. Still not 100%. I actually just started recording the wrong lecture, so that's where I'm at. But anyways, hello. I will include all of that acting stuff. This is just, I asked grad students to do an interview so you guys could see kind of like what their process is, and only two of them responded anyway, so it was pretty short. And it was funny. They were like, really? Nobody else volunteered? Actors love to hear themselves. And I was like, that is hilarious. Good for you guys. You're funny. Anyway, hi. Coming to you from my living room today, because that's just the kind of day it is. All right, so we are talking about the art of directing. First off, the word director comes from the Greek word
Didaskalos.
didaskalos. I have a hard time saying that every semester. Okay, so the director back in the day used to be the playwright or the lead actor. The position of a director didn't really exist until we learn about it in our next slide, but it didn't really exist. So a lot of times in theater history, we have the actor manager, who's basically the director. I mean, a stage manager didn't exist either. All of these jobs used to be kind of like there were actors on stage, and they kind of just figured out what to do. The playwright was the director, like Shakespeare was a director and a playwright, and he acted in his stuff. Like, so all of these people just kind of used to merge. So yeah, they were usually the lead actor or the playwright in a show. Oh, and here we go. And then they were the actor manager is what they were called in the 19th century. Until we have this guy. His name is George II, the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen. Yeah, he is credited to be the first modern director. His wealth allowed him to construct his own theater and organize a resident company of actors and artists. Long rehearsal periods and attention to detail in acting were something that came about because of him. He advocated for historical accuracy, and Stanislavski, who we talked about, I think in the last chapter, was so impressed that he used many of the Duke's techniques with the Moscow Art Theater. So before this, the reason why we're bringing up things like long rehearsal periods, you didn't have rehearsal periods until later because there was no time, and a lot of times, maybe when we go in the history section, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Sorry, I think too fast, so words don't come out as quickly. So they would do things where they would, and you wouldn't have scripts either because, there was no printing press until later on either. So you would have your lines written on a piece of parchment and then the line of the person before you. So you would just have to be paying attention. You don't know what the whole script is. I mean, presumably you'd see it night after night, but you would then listen for your line and then come out. And they would be handed scripts or scenes. Actors would be that day they would perform, and then if people really liked you, like rich people or kings, they would make you come to court and then perform for them and their friends again. And so you'd be up at 6 a.m. and doing an hour or two of just figuring out what you're supposed to do, rehearsal, and then you would then go on and perform for the whole day. That's really, really rough. And then another point from George, advocating for historical accuracy. A lot of times this was not a thing. Even in Shakespeare's time, this was not a thing, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to bring it up again when we learn about Shakespeare, because I think it's funny. So, he wrote Julius Caesar, Shakespeare did, but nobody was on togas on stage. The costumes for a lot of time for theaters, they were just donated clothing from really rich people who loved to go to the theater. So they would be wearing really nice Elizabethan clothing, even though they were supposed to be in Rome. And so the historical accuracy of costumes wasn't a thing until later. Costuming wasn't even a thing until later. People kind of just wore their best clothing and came on stage. You brought your own costumes, and that's something unheard of today. Well, actually, you use some of your own clothing if you're asked, but a lot of times everything is provided for you. Before the director gets into rehearsal, they need to do a lot of research on their own. This is before they get hired, and then before they meet with their designers or anything, they need to kind of figure out what they think about the play. So here's some steps that they go into it before rehearsals and even meetings. So they need to do script analysis. This is analyzing the script. They probably read it about 4 or 5 times before you start rehearsal. They need to work with the playwright if they're available. A lot of times in new plays, the playwright is alive. Um, a lot of theaters like to pick up new plays because people might be sick of seeing the same Shakespeare play over and over again. So this is something that's a newer trend that people really want to read those new plays. And so if the playwright is available, they're not super famous yet, they might come and hang out with you. They might be totally willing to have phone calls with you and kind of describe what's going on, what was going on with the process when they were writing it, and give you a little bit more insight that you can't get from people who are dead or super famous. They spend countless hours reading the script. Oh, I kind of mentioned this with script analysis. Yep, they read it a bunch. And then they're combing through newspaper archives and researching history and criticisms of the play. So you want to always research, I broke one nail, research the time period the play was taking place, what was going on. Is there anything interesting that you might want to add to your play to make it, or to send a different message? What was the other thing? Do you want, reading other people's productions of the play, you don't want to do the same production as another person. Maybe there's something that didn't work when they were doing that play and you don't want to make the same mistakes. So it's good to kind of get an idea of who's done it and what's gone on and how it's been received by audiences. And then they might work with a dramaturg who assists the director in researching and thinking about the play, the playwright, the audience, and questions of style. Continuing on before rehearsals, what happens? So they need to think about the structural analysis of the play. And this is kind of like we saw that video with the structure, the little Freytag's pyramid triangle thing. And it's like, where is the climax in the play? Depending on the director and the people involved, you can kind of make it different places if it's not super obvious. Like with Romeo and Juliet, is it that when he kills Tybalt? Is it when him and Juliet are about to kill themselves? Like, where is the climax and what do you want to focus on? That's important. They think about the theme of the play. What's the message they want to get across? They think about the different characters, the relationships between them, how they actually feel about each other, and like how they fit into the play and the story. They think about the language of the play. They think about the plot. And then they make something called a French scene breakdown, which actually the stage manager makes. I'll attach one for you to see. And this kind of just tells you where people enter and exit and who's in what scene. So then you kind of know, just you can look at it and you'll be like, okay, these are who I have to deal with on certain days. And this is like how it flows. And then they think about something called beats. And beats are when you have a new intention. So you could be having a conversation in the show about one thing, and then the next thing your characters change objectives. What do they want in the next conversation? Like, why they're saying these words for some reason. So why are they saying each words? And you go through your script like this picture here, and you kind of figure out like what is going on. Where do you see in the conversation where it shifts? Is one character have more power over the other character? Who has like the bigger want and intention? You kind of look at that so you can see how after they've done all of their initial research on the play and thought about all of that stuff, they need to realize the production concept. This is the primary metaphor, symbol, or concept that is essential to the production of the play. Production meetings serve to bring the production team a central point in the collaborative process. So, yes, the metaphor that they create is something that everybody on the design team and the show try to follow. And production meetings, as we talked about before, are the meetings that you have weekly to kind of talk about the production. So if you're doing a post-apocalyptic office space crucible, what does that mean? And like how you have these meetings when the costume designer is unsure, you'll be like, this is the direction we should go in. And you have those check-ins so then you can kind of help realize the director's concept and like keep it alive throughout the whole time. After the director's done this research and probably created his or hers thought process metaphor for the play, they need to start thinking about casting. And here's some vocab terms for casting. So there's cast to type, in a part calling for the same characteristics as those possessed by the performers. This could be, you see that the beginning of the script where it says that this is the type of person who's usually cast in that type of role. And you can decide to do exactly what the playwright had envisioned originally, or maybe not. But yeah, casting to type would be playing what that little sentence says. Or I guess you've heard this term probably when you have heard about actors who get cast typed. So there's that guy who is in Hemlock Grove, which was a show, and then he played It, and then he's now in that new Stephen King creepy show. Like, is he going to be cast type because he keeps doing these types of roles? Who knows? Cast against type, the hiring of an actor to play a certain part which differs fundamentally from roles the actor is famous for or played in the past. I guess we could start thinking about when we talked about Jim Carrey when he was in The Truman Show earlier in the semester. That was something that people maybe didn't expect, and so that was against what people normally thought of him because it wasn't a goofball role. There's gender neutral casting, which means they don't see the gender of the character. So it's like it doesn't matter. Like Benvolio, who's Romeo's cousin, it could be a girl, maybe in this case, it doesn't matter. There could be cross-gender casting, which could be like Juliet's character is actually a guy, and maybe Romeo's character is actually a girl, and then you're switching. And then there's colorblind casting. It is the practice of casting without considering the actor's ethnicity, skin color, body shape, sex, or gender.